Good morning and good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
LinkedIn friends. Uh, Tony Dowling's here for our day number 10 to wrap up the Value First framework series. I'm Chris Carolyn. How you doing? How you doing, Tony?
I'm very well, thank you very much. And I'm very honored to have made it onto this series. I've been following the development, your Value First framework, for a long time, as you know. I'm completely made up that you've decided to talk to me, particularly about an area I'm so passionate about leadership, Value First leadership.
Yeah. Well, in our other show, Let's Build HubSpot Adoption, we're always talking about how important it is for leadership, to step up and handle the business. Like, surprise, they need to be engaged and involved, and often they are not.
Yeah.
And we're going to get into a little bit of the why behind that today. And it's interesting. This is last, in the series
Kept the
for a
best till last.
reason, right? What's that?
You kept the best till last.
Yep. Well, it's interesting to think about all 10 pillars, and just to recap for everybody, because this is all the things that leaders need to manage, right? That is what we've talked about so far. We've got AI and avoiding the AI replacement trap. We've got, avoiding the leads trap with value first humans, avoiding the advertising trap with value first communication, breaking free from the lead magnet trap with value first content, avoiding the qualification trap with value first partner, managed services trap, probably my favorite one to talk about, and getting to value first delivery. Avoiding the ERP trap with value first platform, breaking free from the measurement trap. Really powerful conversation with Danielle Urban yesterday, and just moving forward with value first measurement. And then it's hard to pick one. They're all been great. All these experts are great, right? But Matt Bolian yesterday, of course, always brings his just the highest level of insight with value first culture and breaking free from the conformity trap, right? And now we're here with leadership. And what's striking about this is we see organizations hire smart people with specialized expertise, leaders who are really proud of doing that. And they talk about how their people are the difference and all this stuff. And then they prevent them from using that expertise by making them push every decision up through layers of approval, wasting the knowledge of the people closest to the work, right? While also overwhelming leaders, right? This was came out of yesterday with Matt. One of the things he always says, like, what are you doing? Ask me for permission right now. I'm pissed that you're actually taking this time to ask me for permission. Neither of us have this time. You shouldn't have to do it. Why are you doing this? Right. And so Tony, when you're looking at organizations and you see this dynamic, when there's like waiting to do things that they already know are the right thing, right? Like what happens there?
It's interesting, and good shout out to Matt there. I happen to know I share an awful lot of the same views as Matt when it comes to leadership and culture, particularly. And his background in the military has influenced that to a large degree. And I've studied a lot of military leadership as best practice. So that's all mixed into this stuff. But if you want to go right the way back, as you do with this framework, to the industrialization of business, of commerce, this is where it comes from. And we've just started talking about this in Converge in our own agency. And I'm going to call it, as you know, I like to talk about the gaps in businesses. We talk about the adoption gap. But what we've realized is a lot of them in a lot of businesses, they're all really a strategic alignment gap. But you'll see a sales gap or a marketing gap or a production gap or anything else. And what you're really talking about here, I think, Chris, is the control gap. So what you see, and when businesses first started to industrialize, is a small business where the owner operator or the top person in that business has control over everything, where at least everything flows through them, losing that control when a business starts to grow. And instead of being able to instead of them being empowered to, instead of understanding that actually that's the route to scale, that's the route to value for their customers and for their employees, it freaks that person out, right? So what they do is they build structures around themselves, cultures around themselves to enforce their own control over what happens. And it literally hidebounds the customer. It literally hamstrings the business. So I'm going to put in a director under me, and that director is going to have a team of managers under them, and that manager is going to have a team of people under them. But nothing's going to happen unless the decision comes through me. And that's what happens, right? So what you've got is a business leader who's paranoid, insecure, uneducated, potentially, certainly not empowered, and feels like they have to take control, keep control over every development in the business. And that's where it absolutely falls apart. So there are we see a lot of similar conditions. One of them is the size of the business. When businesses get beyond 100 people, this really starts to bite. If you're not able to delegate not only the responsibility to do something, which is what most delegation is, but the authority to do it as well, then your business is going to crunch to a stop. You're going to get stuck. It happens over and over and over again.
And today we're referring to that as the authority trap. And like, I love that walk you just gave, because it makes sense in the beginning. You're the leader, you know the product, you know the customers, you have all the knowledge, right? So it makes sense that you're the guy or the girl making decisions. But as you grow, like, decision rights get disconnected because you're no longer the one on the front lines, right? That's where the knowledge is, right? So naturally we create bottlenecks and slow everything down.
We naturally create bottlenecks, right? So what's happened is, as businesses have had to become more complex, as businesses have right, I'm going to go right the way back now to Victorian England, right? When we first started to bring schools into the equation. The reason we put schools in the public for people was so that our employees had somewhere to put their kids. Right, that's the first reason, because we didn't want the kids running around and setting fire to things and stealing stuff and all that. So we piled them all into schools, right? And the point of the school was to teach you socialization, to turn, to make sure you sort of civilize yourself, but B, to fit into the mold, right? To learn a thing, pass a test, learn a thing, pass a test, learn a thing. Because when you went to the factory or the coal mine or the production line or wherever it's going to be, you had to do something that was very, very process driven. A thing. It's like, imagine that's all you had to do all day, right? So all the factory had to do in order to make more money was make more stuff. Fast forward 200 years or 100 years, whatever it is, 150 years, and now businesses have got different challenges. Now we have challenges of creativity, and our school systems are completely failing to grasp this challenge, because we're still teaching people how to be production line thinkers. We're still teaching people how to be process driven, right? So we created the bottlenecks by maintaining the way we approached business and education to this point, where now we're in this world, we're looking around going, what's going on? What the AI? What do you mean? What we're going on, right? And we have singly failed to prepare our kids, our executives, and our businesses for this world. They don't know what to do. So we literally, as you say, we have literally built these businesses with silos, with hierarchies, with structures that have created bottlenecks, because now all of a sudden there's just too much going on. You can't cope. You absolutely can't cope, because there's just too many inputs, too much information. And it's, sorry, Chris, the point I wanted to pick up is self-inflicted. It's self-inflicted through ignorance, because we haven't shown people that actually this is the wrong way to do it. This is supposed to be industry 4.0, for God's sake. Anyway.
Yeah. And I think we never get there because we can't get away from the word industry, right? Like,
100%.
and that's what, again, this framework tries to help, like, create that path, create that space for you to be able to make common sense decisions, right? Like what we're going to go through. And I always get surprised. I shouldn't be, but as we go through these sessions, there's no revelatory statements they're only revelatory in the fact that somehow businesses cannot say them right now, right? And again, it's because we're so ingrained in this industrial age mindset, and that leads us to thinking that everything needs to be optimized, and that's not what we're here to do with this framework. You need to move from optimization to transformation, right? Went to the AI summit this week, and that was the message. Like, move fast at all costs. Like, that's the new moat. Bring in great people who are able to move fast and can create ideas and then act on ideas. And any experience that did not include AI comes through a filter of, does it matter like anymore, right? Are you, like, in most of the experience out there, you're right at the level of somebody new just learning this stuff, right? So hopefully what we're going to try to do today is help you just talk about this stuff internally, right? Is the first step. So giving you some talking points. We're going to go through a need framework here to help you understand what the trap looks like, so that you can start talking about it internally, right? None of this is easy. Like, we're literally telling you to throw everything you know out the window, right? And then giving you a very, qualitative gray area, never been done before, don't have a ton of metrics, like, or a bunch of case studies, or, all this stuff. But we have to shift the paradigm, right? So this framework, the NEED framework, NEED, stands for natural collaboration, enhanced human capability, elevated value creation, and distributed empowerment.
Distributed empowerment. I love it.
And this first one, natural collaboration versus artificial control. And, the authority trap is ultimate artificial control. Forcing valuable knowledge to fight its way up approval chains. Right? Like, and what does that do to decision making?
So we've actually been wrestling with this for a long time. You're way too young to remember this, right? But there used to be a management idea called MBWA. It was the hottest fad, right? You might remember it in the depths of your memory. It was called management by walking about, right? So we were told as managers that we had to walk about, and we had to talk to people. But because we were never allowed out of the hierarchical chain, those conversations are very one way. They weren't conversations. They literally weren't conversations. They were instructions. They were the cascade of information. The trap, this authority trap is demonstrated brilliantly by that, right? So I'm sat here. I've got this fantastic idea to fix this business problem that is going to save us $1 million, £1 million. And my manager is walking past, and all he's interested in doing is telling me that he's playing golf on the weekend or wherever it is. Right? There's no way for me to actually push my idea up, because the function just isn't there. And the reason for that function not being there is because of this control problem right at the top, because you almost don't have the bandwidth for these inputs unless they come through your chain of command, and that's why it's called a chain of command, right? So it's got to be collated properly. It's like, imagine the most basic computer, and it can only understand the input from the sales director, the marketing director, the people director, the HR director, the ops director, or whatever. It doesn't understand information from the ground floor. It doesn't understand, and this is even worse, Chris. And we used to talk about this from a marketing perspective. Information from the customer. Can you imagine? How does the customer talk to the top of the? They don't. They just can't. It just can't be reached. The structures aren't there, right? So what you're talking about, I think the need framework, particularly with the distributed empowerment and enablement at the back end of it, is about conversation, right? We call it conversational leadership. This is where you actually have two-way conversations with the people in your organization, whether they are employees or customers. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? You know, I'm old enough to remember managing directors with three-piece suits and ties and things, and you were too afraid, you know, as the junior sales person, you were too afraid to even speak to them. Do you know, how limiting is that, right? Well, it wasn't then, because all you needed to do was make more things more quickly. That's all you needed to do. Now that world is gone, it's disappeared, it's over. But the same structures are in place in trying to run our organization, and it needs this need framework. It needs this approach in order to break that down. So actually, with all of our jargon and intellectual insight and all the things, what we're talking about people doing here, businesses doing here, is talk to each other. That's actually what it all boils down to.
Yeah, because like a lot of this, even though it's common sense, and again, the reason for Value First as a whole is leaders don't know how to change. And I think almost every episode, I'm like, if you need some ideas, talk to your team, like especially the people on the front lines.
Yep.
And that's where like just starting with this understanding of natural collaboration. They have all these ideas, right? And you've just been shooting them down for too long. That's why you're not hearing them anymore.
You've employed all these brilliant people, like you said. You've just put them through
Right.
the most ridiculous recruitment process to ensure that you get the best brains in the business, and then you pop them in a box and close the box and stuck it under the table.
Exactly. Instead of our second E, or our first E, which is enhance human capability versus dependency, right?
Yep.
You just described that world of dependency. And, you know, the one thing that's shown up throughout the framework that I'm definitely going to dig into more is all of this stuff, just creating this level of learned helplessness, where in this case, people are assuming they can't make strategic decisions without the boss's approval, even though they almost always have more context than the boss, right? What does that do to team like development?
You've usually got this overriding rationale, right? So somebody somewhere's got a reason why these things are happening, and it's often budgets, right? And a big enterprise maybe is under a lot of pressure, and then immediately does all the wrong things to increase the pressure. So they're like, here's a for instance, I'm working with a customer at the minute who's suffering. I've just had an email from them, and it's exactly this thing, right? I've just suggested the most straightforward idea to absolutely multiply their business, and the first response is, we're going to need to build this case out because the budgets are really tight, and it's insane, right? It's absolutely insane. But it's come from, because the dictum from on top is, let's be careful about the budgets. People don't have the authority to spend the company's money in the first place. So what happens? What you get is, the first case is you get siloization, because people live in the boxes that you were putting them in. And siloization is inherent in teams. If you have a team, you have silos. It's just part of the thing, right? It's just a natural consequence of doing what you do. And then when you keep people in those boxes, in those silos, it becomes ingrained, and then it becomes friction, and then it becomes a problem. But what happens is teams get completely disengaged from the rest of the organization. So the customer that I sent the communication to today, it comes from an observation when I met with their champions team, and this is a cross-functional team. This business is in across Europe and APAC and in GB, and they're all doing different things. They've got a central system, they've got HubSpot, they've got integrations across the and they're all doing different. They're even using different systems. And in the call, there's one guy from Benelux who's like, We'll go and do this, and then there's somebody else going, oh, I don't know whether our marketing team will like that we're doing that, and then somebody else is going, no, if you wait for marketing, it'll never happen, and so it's just this approach causes massive issue. It causes massive, and still, the ultimate authority in the organization would rather suck all these problems up through the pipelines than devolving the power, the authority back down to the users. It's scary, but I sort of understand where it comes from. You know, it either comes from your fear of loss as a leader, that you're losing control. I think that's massive. Or it comes from a stricture that you've placed on the business. No, we're not going to hire anybody else. That's another one that you hear. You know, that's crazy. You're going to lose people. Even if you've got to hire just to stand still. You can't just not hire people anymore. So these things have massive impact that you don't realize. They have impact on the culture. They have impact on your productivity. They have impact on the balance of the business. They have impact on everybody who is disillusioned or becomes dysfunctional because of these programs. They're all pulling you down. They're all moving in different directions. So the very thing that you're trying to do, control the business, is having the opposite effect. It's dragging the business down. It's stalling the business. This is why growth stalls. When everybody is aligned, when everybody is making decisions on the same basis, for the same reasons, with the same vision, the business moves forward really, really quickly. When everybody's making decisions based on their individual budget or their individual job or what they're allowed to make a decision on, the business starts fragmenting and starts going in loads of different directions. And you can see it. I saw it today. I saw it last week. I'll see it next week. It happens all the time.
Yeah. This is where it comes back to this, this industrial infrastructure, like the need for predictability, right? Naturally is like, because what we just described is value creation cannot go up. And sometimes, and I've even been inside where you're giving these moonshot ideas of what's possible. And it's like, no, it's too uncertain. There's risk. Like, we'd rather the value creation stay the same, right? Like, but then when you treat the organization this way and you start to try and optimize and get everybody in their boxes and just fight against the way humans work at the end of the day, right? Value creation goes down, right? And instead, like the second E here, elevated value creation versus optimization, right? Every day spent waiting for approval is a day not creating value, not responding to customer needs or market opportunities.
Yeah.
And this is the spot. If you need help understanding what elevated value creation could look like for your organization, go talk to your lowest of the low data entry person on the customer front lines, the one doing order confirmations, right? They have ideas up the wazoo, but since they haven't been listened to ever, and they feel like you have put them in a role where their responsibility is data entry.
Yep.
And then you mirror that back to them where now you say out loud that their only value is data entry. So how can they create value? Just go ask them, like, all the ideas about how to improve customer experience, special things we can do for customers to build relationships. They've got those ideas, right? What have you seen there? I know you have some examples too, but just like maybe one that like.
Yeah, so there's another one of our customers is a great example. Again, I won't name them, but you have a HubSpot admin in the true sense, right? The sense that we would talk about admin. So the person in charge of HubSpot police, if you like, in an organization who knows what is needed to be done, that will save the business and make the business probably millions of pounds, right? This is insane. Who can't get through because the hierarchical structure of the organization is such that and this is a business who, by the way, believes that they are transforming. The hierarchical is such that their priorities prevent them from looking at new ideas. The priorities prevent them from understanding what's going on. Now, most of these things I'm talking about are sensible, observational feedback things. This is not some admin daydreaming, looking out the window and thinking, wouldn't it be lovely if the sky was blue? And this is somebody who goes, oh wait, when I do this, this happens. If I did this, this other thing would happen. These are and just what happened. And what's happening is this person I know will leave the organization because they're so frustrated. And what are they going to do? They're going to take, first of all, they're going to take all of that tacit HubSpot knowledge out of the business. They're going to take all that motivation to fix things out of the business. They're going to take all that value, as you would call it, Chris. They're going to take it all out of the business and going to take it somewhere where it will be gratefully received. And the thing that frustrates me the most about all of this, you might be aware of the Boston Consultancy Group. They're a consultancy business in America somewhere. I think you may have heard of them. Anyway, they come up with this life cycle model, right? And businesses find themselves following this path all the time. You go from introduction into growth into maturity. BCG call it the cash cow. Then you become a dog, as they call it, right? You go into decline after that. And businesses cannot get out of that pattern. They cannot. Why? Because they continue to exert control and strangle the business instead of doing exactly the opposite to what they should be doing. In order to try and maintain the growth, they exert more and more control, and the control is only one way, as you've said, right? So this person in this business, they can't get their ideas even listened to, because the person at the top doesn't listen to the HubSpot admin. They have there's no channel there. There's like walking past, going, "Oh, can I just grab you for a sec?"
Yeah.
It's just absolutely insane. So the faster your business grows and the bigger it grows, and I can think of another customer as I'm talking about this, they've been through an incredible growth spurt, and they've hit a bump. They've hit a bump, and it could be existential, right? And they've got so big so fast without considering that scale. They've still got the same way of running the organization as they did when they were small. In other words, that control framework that they now can't move. They can't think. They can't adapt. They can't adjust. So, question: are you doomed as a business to follow the Boston Consultancy Group's growth intro cash cow dog? Are you doomed to follow it? Because when Kodak look at the digital camera that they invented, and they go, we better not push this because it'll impact our 35mm film business, they're doomed, right? Anybody who is exerting this level of control in order to try and fix the thing that they're fighting, in order to fix the growth thing that's grown to a halt, is absolutely doomed. The stakes are that big. It's insane, and it's everywhere.
Yeah, and I'm so glad you brought up BCG.
Oh, you've
This last one, distributed empowerment versus centralized dependencies. The way that the centralized dependency part can find its way to BCG because they're the consulting group. Like, meanwhile, experts inside the organization, like, you don't listen to them. You will go outside. This is where you're paralyzed. You don't know how to change because you cannot trust, the people that you brought in. And when if it only works when the decision maker is involved, you haven't built any organizational capability.
Exactly.
Right?
This is why a lot of this thinking comes from this is why I mentioned Matt earlier, comes from the military, right? When your army is 5,000 people strong, and you're the general sat on your horse behind the front line, you're not going to get too close to the danger point, right? And in front of you are your officers, and in front of them are the sergeants, and in front of them are the men, right? Then the unit is extraordinarily flexible. You can spot a change in the environment, in the market, and say, "By Jove," as they say in England, or they talk like this, "By Jove, the blighters are flanking us," right? And 5,000 men, you can get the order out to the next line, to the sergeants, who then start sticking people with sharp sticks, and the whole 5,000 phalanx of men, it all moves, right? When armies became not only bigger, but much more distributed over the battlefront as well, as this became a lot, these people aren't lining up to be shot at anymore, they're all hiding in buildings and things, right? So Matt will have been taught and will have taught his teams to function individually. So the whole organization itself functions, even the lowliest soldier, the foot soldier, is trained to be able to act on their own and trusted to be able to act on their own within the rigor of the military. If the military can do it, oh my God, why can't businesses do it? this distributed decision making, distributed problem solving and thinking, this distributed authority taking. Military cannot function without it. It cannot. You find yourself, and I've never been there, thank God, thanks to the people like Matt and like Chris Dubois who've done this stuff for real, right? But you find yourself north of your forward operating position in Fallujah, you and two mates, and the bad guys are streaming over the hill. What are you going to do? Well, you're not going to sit there and wait for an order. Not anymore. You would have. You absolutely would have. And that's what businesses are doing. They're sitting there waiting for the order. The troops on the ground, the people and the customers are saying, hey, why don't you do this thing? And the troops are going, sorry, Chris, that's a really good idea. We should really do that. Let me put a call into the top brass.
Yeah. And especially when they go out to like consulting groups and stuff, like, that there's another reason they're not moving, right? And this is just another way to delay change and, try to CYA, like, and, you can't afford to do that anymore, like not in this environment. That was the biggest message from AI Summit this week. Speed, speed, speed at all costs. And when you think about how that gets prevented, it is in everybody's had these meetings where everybody's aligned, everybody knows the problem, everybody knows how to solve it, yet we cannot move forward, we cannot execute. So this is where I scare the shit out of everybody, and I talk about what value first leadership looks like. And we're going to talk about some steps at the end to start moving in this direction, but I want to paint the picture and just think about, like, none of these are revelatory again, right? Only in the way that we've done things. But when you think about how humans work and how humans can be successful, especially when you have AI starting to come in and enable all of these things in a way that creates transparency and visibility and, just things we haven't had access to before, right? It's a new world. But just imagine if your business could say these things. So 7 principles, commitments that show you're a value first leader, right? Number 1, we will create conditions for value rather than controlling outcomes.
Yep.
We believe leadership's primary role is to enable rather than direct. Number 2, we will distribute authority to where knowledge naturally exists. We believe decisions work best when made by those with the most relevant knowledge and context. Number 3, we will illuminate paths rather than dictate routes. We believe leadership should provide clear direction without prescribing exactly how to get there. Number 4, we will ask powerful questions rather than provide answers. We believe leadership's wisdom emerges through inquiry more than instruction. Number 5, we will remove barriers rather than add pressure. We believe value emerges naturally when obstacles are removed. Number 6, we will enable learning over controlling execution. We believe adaptation requires freedom to experiment and learn. We commit to creating environments where continuous learning drives improvement rather than focusing primarily on error prevention and control. And number 7, we will foster authentic connection over formal hierarchy. We believe leadership influence comes through relationships and not position. Which one, if you could pick one, Tony, which one resonates the most for you there?
There's a couple, that sort of slap me in the face because they go to the heart of what I believe leadership is about. But the last one about relationships, I think personally is the most resonant because I believe in this idea of conversational leadership, right? So you've got, in order to make the change, you've got the ability. And strictly, if we were in business school now, we would be talking about transactional and transformational leadership. And transformational leadership, despite its term, It's not necessarily what we're talking about. It's not necessarily value first, because transformational leadership is top down. And though you need that top down, I believe it needs to be delivered transactionally. It needs to be delivered through conversation, right? So this is not about sitting in your walnut office, issuing edicts down to your teams. It's about breaking those breaking those silos down, breaking those layers down, breaking those structures down, and building relationships with the people so that they trust, right? You've got to, the idea is one called servant leadership. You exist as a leader. You've probably got a boss. Your boss has told you, go and achieve this thing for me, right? So you exist as a leader to recruit the people who are going to be able to do that and then get out of their way. Not only do you have to get out of their way, you have to get everything else out of their way so they can do the things that you need them to do. How can you be brighter or more flexible or adaptive or more intelligent than 50 people? You can't. You've got to access those 50 people. And you're only going to do that through the relationship, right? If you've got hierarchical structures, if you've got people communicating up and down the vacuum tubes, and that's the only way that they can get a message to you, it's just not going to happen. The true servant leader, the true value first leader, understands that we need to extract this value from a business. We're going to do that by multiplying ourselves as leaders, not by maintaining ourselves as the leader and then having everything smaller than us, but by being the platform on which everybody else can stand. Now, you mentioned AI there, perhaps unsurprisingly. I've got this theory I'm just developing at the minute, right? I was disrupted, like a lot of people were, by the internet. We were probably the second industry to get disrupted, the media industry. The first one was music. You may remember there was a program around called Napster that caught on quite quickly, and lots of bands tried to sue them because they took their way of earning money away, right? And it took an enormous amount of work and thinking and clever thinking to come up with an alternative method for these creators to get any cash. But imagine at the same time, Google was hoovering up all of our content and reserving it to people in a much more organized manner, right? So we thought this is, and the internet turned everything upside down. I don't think so. I think the internet now, in hindsight, was a strategic burp. It was the first opportunity, right? We talked about how it democratized businesses and it allowed people to create, I see adverts of this all the time. If you can write a PDF, don't even write it. Get Claude to do it, right? Get Claude to write your PDF. You could sell it for $1.99 and you'll be a millionaire, right? The internet the AI is that transformation. AI is literally, right? So, okay, the internet has put the world's information at our fingertips. Without Google, it doesn't make any difference. Without Google, we couldn't reach it. Without Google, we can't understand it. We don't have a lens to make any sense of it. I think AI is the true transformation. It's the truly transformational content, right? I can sit and have a conversation with my phone. It blows my mind. It's like talking to the computer on Star Trek. I'm talking to my computer. I don't type anymore, right? It's so slow and cumbersome. I speak to my computer, and this is transformational. As we just said, that PDF model, you can build a business off the back of it. We're building, I won't go into too much detail, but we're building a strategy AI at the minute that's going to do what we do that takes us 3 months to do in an hour. Because you do not know business, you do not know what's coming. This is just the start of it. We're not even in AI really. We're in LLMs and LRMs and things, and we know all the criticisms of those. What's that going to look like in a year? What's that going to look like in 5 years? The internet is 20 odd years old, whatever it is, 30. What's AI going to look like in that same time lapse?
Oh,
the internet wasn't the change. Digital wasn't the change. AI is the change. AI is the disruptor.
Yeah. That aligns with my thought on SaaS. And if you're a leader listening to this, this is why I totally agree. And if you have a bad taste in your mouth, which I wouldn't blame you, when it comes to digital transformation and technology and SaaS, I think it's very possible that in 50 years we look back and we're like, SaaS was not the answer. Right.
SaaS was not. You were so right. And CRMs are not the answer.
Right.
And no takers are getting closer to the answer as it happens. But the ability, this transformational thing that happened last week, where I can now plug my HubSpot into ChatGPT, and I can ask in natural language. That's the answer,
Right.
right? As a business, going, who's my most productive salesperson? Not going in and looking HubSpot is going to look so, and Salesforce and everything else, they're going to look so prehistoric because we had to do it all ourselves. Imagine you got to put the data in yourself. You've got to come up with the algorithms yourself. You've got to create automation, they call it. You had to build it. Nonsense.
Yeah. Everything is driving towards that conversational.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's interesting because I think, and this is where we come back, and we'll get to some things you can do if you know that you're in this trap, which, a spoiler alert, you all are. It takes something like, in marketing, it's usually happens to be like the worst representation of this, but because of the system that we put everybody in, things like, I believe management by walking around is intended, like, and can be done like very well. Because if there's any way to build relationships like with your team, it is by talking to them.
It's access.
Right. But when you do it, the best managers I've seen, it's not about what you've done today or yesterday. It's how are you? Like, what's on your mind? Like, interactive, like two-way conversations, like you mentioned. But when we create all this infrastructure and how things are supposed to be, and, that's where it's gotten out of hand. And SaaS has exacerbated that in a big way. And so if there's somebody watching or listening, like, that sees that they're in this trap, right? What are some practical first steps they can take?
It's such a good, such a big question, and it's such a big question. So a lot of this comes from what we call, as I said at the top of the show, we call a strategic misalignment, right? You have top-down thinking, which is what you might call your strategic thinking, your bottom-up thinking, and they're not meshed. They're not joined together, right? So there's no feedback loop. Okay, so what it means is, your brain, imagine, and your central nervous system, they're disconnected, right? So my thinking is disconnected from my feeling and my doing. Okay, so imagine you're walking around, right, and you step on a pin, and your foot starts, and you can't feel it. That's what it is, right? So the first thing you have to do is you have to connect those things together. Now, there are clever ways that we do that. There are clever ways that we close that gap, and our business is about that, if you want to talk about those clever ways. But the easiest way to do it is to do what you've just said, and that is to put down your pen or shut down your laptop or switch off your computer and get off your ass and out of your office, because you probably got one. And even if your team is remote, right? Get on the phone or get on the video call and talk to your people. And you've got to change, right? If you're going to do that, you're going to have to change, because you won't have time to do anything else. Now, in my last proper job where I got paid a salary to lead, I did my work between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. when the first person came in, and between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. when the last person was going. Because in the day, what was I doing? I was talking to people. I was managing by walking about, or people were popping in. The open door policy. You remember that? This is the first route to realizing how much value there is trapped in your organization. How much value is in these bubbles of intelligence and excitement and motivation and dynamism and creativity trapped under the surface of your organization, under the surface of the way you manage it, right? You free a couple of those bubbles up by having a chat and thinking, shit, yeah, we should do that. Why aren't we doing that? Well, you're the boss, make it happen, right? You make it happen, and suddenly you're like, wow, you have all this resource within your organization, all these people. The human advantage of your organization is freeing the humans to be human by employing technology like AI to get rid of all the shit, so that they can do the thinking thing, they can do the creative thing, they can do the talk. Get a team of dynamic, motivated, intelligent, young people together. They don't have to be young, but it's perhaps you wouldn't believe your business be transformed within an hour.
Yeah.
Just sitting there listening to them. So the first thing is get switch off, get out of your office and go and talk to people, or get on the phone, or get on a video call. 100%.
Yeah. And so as you can imagine, similar to the culture answer yesterday, but the one, like, fair bit of warning, like, because you've caused this as the leader, you own this problem that you are now trying to solve. When you do this and you've never had two-way conversations before, don't expect the first ones to go well, right? Because we're here having never experienced this before. And you're the leader, and this dynamic has been in play. So I'm not going to open up for shit, right? I'm going to try and figure what's the play here, like what's going on, like what's the agenda. It might take a few iterations, right? And this is where, like, you can't just say we're doing open book management now,
No.
right? And then have this town hall where it's just you talking at everybody.
Can't just switch it on. Totally.
Right? You have to get vulnerable as a leader. You have to talk about, this is where it's like, there's lots of people like us that would love to help consult and coach through this, because it is not easy, right? But it is imperative that you get
it's more than not easy. I remember it may depending on the size of your organization and the longevity of the hierarchical status prior, it might take you as much as a year. But in this organization I took over, it took a year to get what you were talking about, right? I remember going into it's a floor of journalists who are probably the most cynical people in the world anyway. Walking onto the floor of journalists as the MD, relatively new, had only been there a couple of weeks. The guys had produced this piece of content. This was back when it was paper, it was newsprint, right? They'd produced this paper for the next day following a football match. Our local team had won the final, and everybody stayed late and produced this incredible ceremonial keepsake edition of the newspaper, right? And it was it should have won awards if it didn't. I'm sure it did. It was a brilliant piece of work. And I went downstairs the next morning and I asked them all to gather around. And I was like, I just want to tell you how much I appreciate and respect the effort that you put. It's absolutely brilliant. It's going to make us a ton of money. You've done an amazing job. Thank you so much, And I've never been more badly received. It was a total bomb, right? So I sat there thinking, okay, actually I stood there and I walked out and I grabbed the deputy editor and I said, what did I do wrong? what happened there? And do you know what she said, right? She said, no, it's brilliant, fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And we'll talk about it as a team. We'll talk. But let me tell you, she said the only time they would have seen the MD prior was when announcements of redundancy were getting made. So when you walked onto the floor and told everybody to gather round, and even when you were saying this was brilliant work, they were waiting for the shoe to drop. They were waiting for the redundancy announcement. Can you imagine how dysfunctional the culture in that organization was? And so it took, and this is it. What you'll get first up is bullshit. What you'll get is people telling you what they think you want to hear, because their default position is how do I keep my job, right? So nobody's going to say you need to change everything because they want to keep their job. And it took me, in that real world example, it took me a year to get to the point where people and I didn't know their names, people on reception or in the print room or wherever would come up to me as the MD and say, I've got a great idea. It took a year of persuading people to do that before they would actually do it. Now that's an extreme example. It was a big organization, multi-million pound, and on the cusp of digital change, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, what you said there, times 10, times 1,000.
Right. And I don't even think it's that extreme. Like, most actually try and don't hang in there for it. Yeah. They're like, oh, this clearly isn't going to work. So they don't get it. Right.
It's hard, isn't it? As a leader, you get rejected like that. It's really embarrassing.
Right. But then we come back to the servant leadership, means everything. You're there to serve. You got to take it. Again, you created this scenario. Yeah. If you see this as the path out, you got to walk down it. Yeah. Right. And, but the people will love you for it eventually.
Eventually.
And the more vulnerable and open you are, the faster you'll get,
Yeah.
to where you want to go.
Yeah.
So this is the final trap in the series. We've covered all 10. Tony, this has been brilliant as always.
Fantastic. I love it. If you want to talk about this stuff, you know where to come. I'm passionate about it and passionate about transforming leaders to be like this in their organizations. This is what we need. This is how we're going to survive.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Maybe
Chris.
this is the new series, Value First Leadership with Tony Dowling. Well,
I love it.
Stay tuned. But in the meantime, just map this out. Like, where are decisions getting stuck, like in your organization? Share what you have with the people around you. You're free to share them in the comments, and just like start to think about this in this way, and you will start to make progress. And then if you run into a leader who doesn't appreciate what you're doing, send them our way.
Yeah.
We'll take care of business for you.
We'll sort them out for you.
So thanks so much for joining us on this journey through the Value First framework. And until next time, have a great weekend, everybody. Thanks so much, Tony.
Brilliant. Cheers, Chris.